Okay, so welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Friday. Happy Venus Day, February 28th, 2025. And we are at a celebration for the secrets of your Venus sign. And if you have not yet gotten a hold of the free guide, I highly encourage you to do so you can really peruse that and contemplate that and better understand these qualities that live within you and to be in a relationship with those qualities, maybe in a new way after we have this time together. And so I'm going to go ahead and drop that link for those of you that may not have it yet. I think most of you got it and hopefully looked at it and hopefully learned some things about why Venus is so important and how that lives in you. So my name is Sasha Rose, and I am the founder of Venus Wisdom, and I'm super excited to be here with you. We've got some Sag Venus and Virgo Venus, wonderful. Venus in Capricorn, Venus in Scorpio in the house, excellent, wonderful. Venus in Cancer in the second house. So the reason that I wanted to share this Venus wisdom today is because we're at a very, very potent moment in this cycle. The Venus cycle is a 19-month process. And even if you don't know anything about that, there's so much value in tuning in and tapping in and starting to sync with this cycle and starting to move with this cycle. So if you want to take a moment, if you did bring any of your essential oils, anything yummy, and you want to put a little of that in your hand and rub them together and take a nice big breath. Just activate your senses, maybe, give yourself a little blessing and touch your body and just say hello. When we open up the senses and we say hello to the sensual, yes, stretching, moving, we are already activating into Venus, our Venus. Venus is our feminine nature. And she's very much the spirit of creation and the spirit of connection and the spirit of love and care. So as you take a smell, if you brought essential oils, just notice what happens in your body when you open up your sense of smell and when you begin to tune in and tap into that. And then as part of our welcoming here, if you have a vessel of water, this substance represents the feminine principle of flow. We can imprint our energy into water. We can actually structure our own water through intention, through energy. Take a moment and bring your water to your heart and tune into your own heartbeat. Feel and detect your own heartbeat. And if you don't have the water, you can just do this with yourself. We are water. So you're imprinting upon your own water body. And as you tune into your own heartbeat here, to connect with that spark, that warmth, that sense of love, and feel how that wants to expand. So as you're tuning into your own heartbeat here, and you are feeling yourself, feeling that rhythm, feeling your own rhythm, take a few breaths and slow down and sink in to that sense of your own flow, your own rhythm. And imagine everyone that you love and care about. And notice how that feeds that fire and that connection, that wanting to share that sense of love and care. I'm taking a few breaths there. I'm going to put on a song that feels like it's in the spirit of the energy of Venus and Aries at the end of the cycle. And you can give yourself a cheers and you can take, a sip of this beautiful water that's been encoded with your care. You can keep holding it there if you want, or you can just sit and contemplate in that deeper place of what does my heart want? What does my heart want right now?
I am the rainstorm. I am the ocean.
want to do any moving with that, with what your heart wants? I believe so.
Hello, butterfly. I am the sun. I am the lustrous. I am the one. I've been seeking out my whole life long. I'm the roots and the way the river waters run. Hello, butterfly. Hello, butterfly. I am the mountain. I am the rainstorm. I am the ocean. I am the way home. I am the mountain. I am the rainstorm. I am the ocean. I am the way home. I am the mountain.
So, with that feeling of what your heart wants, what does my heart want? Hopefully, you got a sense of that. And if you have a candle and you want to light your fire, that can hold you during this container and this time we have together. And we're going to be about 75 minutes. I might go over. I'll do my best to keep it in that. So you'll receive all the links and things that I'm talking about, including that song. And that song is part of a larger flow. I did a Venus through the signs. So there's a song for every single sign. So if you want to go in there and you want to find your Venus sign and see how it resonates, you'll have access to that. So what we did just there, the water, the womb of creation, the flow, the feminine, the way that we are everything. I am the mountain, I am the rainstorm, I am this creatress. And then we moved into what we wanted and we lit a fire. That is called the world point in astrology. And that's this movement from 29 degrees of Pisces, which is the very last degree of the last sign of the zodiac, into the first degree of Aries. So that crossing that threshold is called the world point. And it's a very, very powerful point for manifestation and for creation. And it shows us that even though Aries is the first sign, there's always something that comes before. There's always the womb that births the spark. In astrology, the first sign of Aries is connected to Mars and is connected to masculine fire. And yet it births from the water wombs of the feminine always. And the interesting thing about this time that we're going into right now is that Venus is crossing that world point from 29 Pisces to 1 degrees Aries 3 times in this process of ending one cycle and beginning another cycle. And that's unusual because she's going to go retrograde. So she's going to go back and do it again. She's going to go back and then, be retrograde over that point and then come back again. And not only Venus, and I'm not going to get into all the other astrology because, oh my goodness, this year of 2025 is just off the charts. And I'm sure you're seeing that. And today we're going to focus on Venus and I'm going to tell you why. Not that none of that is important. I think it's all very powerful. But for me, the Venus cycle in the last 12 years, the way that I've worked with it, it's the container that can hold all of it. It's the heroine's journey that can hold all of the energetic shifts we are going through. Uber intense, never been experienced before, change of ages. We are coming to, according to one astrologer that I very much respect, the end of the Kali Yuga, which was supposed to go on for like 450,000 more years. And he's like, no, actually, I recalculated it and it ends March 25th, 2025. And he has a lot of credence. He's a super scholarly astrologer and he reworked it all. And this makes sense, right? Because we're moving into the age of Aquarius. So why wouldn't those two time trackers from different cultures line up? So I'm holding that as part of this potency, the end of the dark age, the end of the time of inversion, the end of the time where so much corruption comes to light. It makes sense when we look at the world. We're not going to be hanging out in this kind of degradation for 400,000 more years. Like, how would we do that? We're all just like hanging on by our fingernails at this point, right? And finding the power of the heart. So this is the time to be an initiated woman on the planet. And the reason that I really put out this call for women on a sacred fucking mission, women who know you have something here to bring and you have gifts that the world needs. And so you are willing, because of that devotion, because of that fire, you're willing to do your own inner work to overcome your fears about being visible and whatever blocks you from showing up and claiming your authority from your lived experience, from your inner experience, from all that life has gifted you. And this power of syncing with Venus, it is such an incredible tool for any woman at any life stage. Like, it is the path of becoming the woman who we need to be to make our dreams come true. It is the way to that. And it is through this willingness to look at our identity, look at our conditioning, look at who we've been told that we are, and unravel, to shed, to say, oh yeah, I'm doing this because that's the programming from dad, or I'm doing this because that's what I was told here, or whatever that is. And to say, I'm actually not going to hang on to that identity. So it's an identity shed. It's to get down to the truer, to get down to the core. This is the heroine's journey. And that takes bravery, it takes courage, it takes honesty, and it takes kindness. Because if you want that self-awareness, that self-love needs to match it. Otherwise, we're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that, said that, am this, reacted that way. So those two rise together. I just wanted to say a little bit more about why I started Venus Wisdom. I'm an astrologer, and I consider myself a heroine's journey guide because I love this movement. I fell in love with the movement of the Venus cycle, and I realized that's the movement of us in our feminine nature. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. But I started this sacred mission as my business, which to me is just the most incredible opportunity you have in this modern day, is that we can actually do what we love, find our gifts, and generate resources to bring that vision into reality, to serve at the highest level those who need our medicine, to hire other people to be a part of our movement, to change the world, to really create the new world, and not the new world they have planned, not the new world order with their dystopian, new digital prison system, but the real organic, caring, connected, nature aligned world. And this is, the world that is birthed from the mother heart. And even if we don't have children, anyone can have a mother heart. And that's really the power to rebirth the world, is coming through that kind of energy. We can trust that. We can trust that energy. We can trust that energy of the mother heart, because the mother heart is going to protect the most vulnerable. And the mother heart is going to invite everyone to the table, include everyone in that. Unless they're harmful, then, mama bear comes out. Anyone who's in the spirit of what we're creating, the spirit of creation, the spirit of life, life affirming kinds of relationships, kinds of projects, kinds of businesses. So I wanted to say that, I watched Venus cross the face of the sun in 2012. Maybe you've heard that story, but it was very powerful for me. And I embarked on the path of the entrepreneur at that point. And I called my business Venus Rising at that point, because it felt like this call to rise into the leadership of the feminine, which is empathetic leadership, which is leadership with vulnerability, which is leadership that is connected. It's the opposite of the dominator culture of power over, do what I say or else, right? And then I changed the name in 2020 to Venus Wisdom, because Venus does not just rise, she also descends. And so it's the rise and the descent, how we gain our wisdom. So in her cycle, she has this process of being born, creating that impulse to be able to use one's own energy to create something, whether that's a child, a business, a project, putting energy into a relationship, one's art, whatever that is. And then from that process, we go on a journey of discovering, who do I need to become to actualize that big dream, those bigger dreams? And we fall down and we descend and we find out things about ourselves that are hard. We fail. We get criticized. We criticize ourselves. We misjudge what it takes. We make mistakes. We find resources. We find allies. We get stronger. We do it even though it's hard. We remember again and again who we truly are. And in that remembering, in that fortification of who we are, we get stronger and we strengthen that place within us that I call the inner heroine. And in that process, at some point, we have an initiation where we totally lose control and we surrender to the process. We surrender to our becoming. We surrender to the place within us where we connect with source and we realize, oh, I have the power to love me. I have that divine spark inside of me. I don't need to find that elsewhere and outside of me, although that's lovely. I can fill me up. I can be my own unconditional mother love. I have the power to give myself that. And we become an initiated woman. And then we re-arise back into visibility, back into the community. And we have now this applied wisdom. We have more of a sense of who we truly are. And we begin to show up that way and see what happens, because it's always a risk to show who we truly are. And so we get stronger and we begin to receive feedback, both negative and positive. Some people aren't going to like who we truly are. Some people are going to love it and say, thank you. I've been waiting to find you. And then we reach that peak of maturity and celebration. And yes, I get to be me. I get to be who I am and share my gifts. And I actually get to create from that place. And I get to create abundance. And I get to have prosperity. And I get to help many other people because I'm willing to go through this process. And then it begins again in the Venus cycle. So this is just an articulation of the Venus cycle. And we're right now at that very end part where we're just coming to the peak of Venus sitting as queen of heaven and earth, as is this brilliant, brilliant dripping light in the western sky. And we're about to start a new cycle. So I want to share some things with you because there's a sense of this motion that I want to share with you, this movement. And what would happen if we really knew how to move with ourselves? We really knew our own rhythm and we knew when is it time to act? When is it time to be still? When is it time to speak? Oh, if I speak now, am I not really aligned with my truth? Let me pause. Oh, I need to rest. Oh, I need to recover. Oh, now is the time to be bold and to step in because no one else is going to. What if we knew how to move with ourselves at the deepest level and navigate this transition in this change of era with all the uncertainty, with all the chaos, and to stay centered in that place or to keep coming back to that place? I mean, we get uncentered, we fall off. That's part of the falling down and coming back up again, the descending and the rising. I'm going to show you these images first, and then I'm going to give you some dates, and I want you to write down these dates because they're dates to watch for. But the main idea that I propose is to not get pulled into the future too fast because we're at a peak moment here. Tomorrow, Venus is going to go retrograde. She's right now in the sign of Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, and she's going to go retrograde, and it's going to be a real time of reflection. And I want to invite you into that in a very conscious way. And if you're not yet in the Facebook group and you want to be, I'm going to be holding a bit of a reflective time in there for this retrograde cycle. And so that will be in the links for the replay. So staying with what it means to be receiving the end of a cycle, it's time to celebrate. It's time to really honor all the ways you've come home since the beginning of this cycle on August 13th. 2023. Even if you didn't know anything about this cycle, energetically, it's going to start to make sense. If you're here, if you found your way here, there's something in you that is meant to connect with this rhythm, this pattern, this wisdom of Venus. So you might be surprised when you go back and do a reflection. So you're going to want to circle that one, August 13th, 2023. And we're going to do a bit of an exercise together where you're going to do some journaling on that. And don't worry if nothing lines up exactly to that date, but a really good way to know what was moving through your life is to look at your journals, look at your photos, because it will trigger. It was like, I don't know, what was even happening August of 2023. So that's a really good way to do that. All right. So let me share with you some things. And then we'll go into celebrating the signs, celebrating you for this incredible time that we're living in, and saying yes to the journey and being willing to shine and being willing to be present. You may have heard, and there's a lot of buzz, which there tends to be. There's a lot of astrology now on social media. It's coming at you 24/7, which can be, kind of intense. I find it kind of intense because there's a lot of anticipation. It's like this thing, this thing, this thing. And that's the opposite of the art of receiving, which is part of the art of transformation, because a lot of that happens in reflection and contemplation. So we're going to go into a deeply reflective time, and that move of reflection, sometimes you don't get the wisdom until after the event has passed. So there's great value in going back and looking at the dates. So, oh my gosh, all the planets, they're aligning tonight. Oh my gosh, February 28th, it's a whole thing. There's like this amp. And not to say that's not beautiful and wonderful. Please go out and look at the planets. They're always amazing. But there's something about the difference between the consciousness of the point in time. This thing tonight, it's really important. It's happening. And the wave. So when you begin to sync with Venus, when you begin to move with your feminine nature, it's the wave. It's not this one moment in time. Oh my goodness, you have to blah, 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 do the thing. It's like, oh, this is a moment within a larger cycle, and there's a movement. So I just want to show you visually a little bit about that. So if we look to the west tonight, this is going to be a moment where Venus is still quite high, and you may be able to see Mercury. Mercury is pretty tricky. Mercury is the trickster, but you may actually be able to see Mercury and that very, very first crescent after the new moon. So in Venus's evening star phase, she meets the moon after the new moon happens. And there's a whole process that I work with those that work with me about what the moon means and what the new moon means, and then what I call the new Venus portal. So that new Venus portal is when Venus and the moon meet up. And it's really this opportunity for our conditioned feminine, the moon, our history, our story, our memories, our family conditioning, the way that we hold that meets with Venus, which I consider more of our evolutionary feminine nature. And so you may be able to see this tonight or not. It's pretty low on the horizon. So maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow will be the exact meetup of Venus and the moon. So you can see that there is some beautiful action happening. This is in the west after sunset. But when we look at the actual chart of, today, and we say, oh my goodness, all the planets are aligned, we can see that that's, yes, there's a lot of visible planets, but it's not really in that realm of they're all in a line. I mean, we do have quite a pile up in Pisces, and that is significant, of course, that to have so many planets that are going to be moving from that, remember, that last degree of Pisces into the first degree of Aries. We're going to have a whole movement of that. But Venus herself is already in Aries, and Uranus is not visible in Taurus, Jupiter's in Gemini, Mars is in Cancer. So all of the visible planets are visible, maybe if you catch Saturn and Mercury right after sunset and you have a really good Western view. But it's not so much this like once in a lifetime thing. You need to get out there right now and see it. Although you always, I think, benefit from going out and being under the sky. But to have this amped up moment in time as compared to the flow in the cycle and understanding, oh, wow, this is important. Venus is coming to the end of a 19-month cycle. Mars is in his own cycle with the sun. Mercury's getting ready to go retrograde. There's all these other things that are happening that aren't about like this one moment in time. And so many of you probably are already orienting to the moon. I just wanted to show a quick graphic to just show that's a movement, right? From the new moon to the full moon back to the new moon. And a lot of women have come into this relationship with planting seeds of intention on the new moon and then watching them grow, having that peak at the full moon, and then that decrease. So there's this understanding of movement that comes from that monthly moon cycle. And so the Venus cycle, if you're very new to it, it's similar. It's just the movement is over a much longer period of time. So this is actually Venus in her cycle. A photographer went out and took pictures of her from her morning star phase and then into her evening star phase. She went behind the sun here, so there's no pictures of her, but she actually has a shape. She changes shape and she makes a crescent too, just like the moon. It's just a longer and more subtle process, and one that the ancients were tracking incredibly closely, but we as modern people have mostly forgotten. But there's a whole movement of women waking up to the Venus cycle and moving with the Venus cycle. So Venus's cycle is happening over 19 months, and now we have the sun in the middle and the earth here, and she starts her cycle closest to the earth with this intimacy with earth, with this transmission coming to us, inviting us on the heroine's journey. And whatever sign she meets the sun at that point, it gives us the theme for the entire 19 months. So I want you to remember this. The sign that she meets up with the sun is like the book of the heroine's journey. So currently we're in a Venus and Leo cycle. We're closing out 19 months. And so that book has different chapters because she's going to change signs every 4 weeks about. She's going to be a morning star. She's going to go through all of this journey to discover who she needs to become to realize her big dreams and fulfill her sacred mission. She's going to disappear as morning star. She's going to go invisible behind the sun. And then she's going to reemerge as evening star and have this whole journey to discover what it means to show up more fully in the truth of who she is and see what comes back, see her impact, share her applied wisdom, take that risk. And then she's going to peak in that cycle and then go retrograde and dissolve back into the cosmos and start again. So you can see it's a similar movement. It's just over 19 months. So it really gives us this substantial amount of time to be in a transformational process. There's only so much that can happen in a month. And we have a much larger container. And when we have Venus with the sun, we have the principle of the sun, the energy of life, the life-giving force, the light, the heart, the sense of possibility, of growth, of expression with Venus, the principle of love and care and connection. It's a very positive union. It's a very pure union. When Venus meets the sun here, it's called Kazemi, in the heart of the sun. And so that energy, that sign that they meet in is very exalted. And so here's the two cycles for those of you that are visual and want to see them side by side. Here's the 29-day moon cycle and the 19-month Venus cycle. And you can see they're similar in some ways with the movement, but different. And the focus is different because Venus is not included in the moon cycle. And the moon is included in the Venus cycle through the new Venus portals. So with the Venus cycle, you have the sun, which is that creation energy. You have the heart of Venus and how we connect, how we give and receive love. And you have the moon, which is our conditioning, which is our story, which is our way that we remember where we came from and reshape our story into who we are. So at the beginning of this cycle, this was a graphic from an event that I put on that I'm editing a replay of this with just like highlights, because I think a lot of you would have value in going back to that moment when the cycle began. I called it the Great Lioness Reset, as opposed to the Great Reset. that the World Economic Forum is planning. How do we as heartfelt visionary women, how do we create the world that we want to leave for our children and grandchildren, or the grandchildren, even if we're not biological mothers? Those that have that sense of the vision for the future. And so we had this gathering right at that Cazimi, right when Venus met the sun. And we really opened up this energy of the lioness. And the card that really goes with this is the strength card. And even though there's a lot of joy in this sign of Leo, it's about creativity and joyfulness and our child self and our creative power and how we reclaim that. Strength comes from adversity. And I don't know about you, but this cycle had a lot of adversity for me and for a lot of the women that I connect with, because it's that strengthening of the heart that comes from moving through those difficulties and those obstacles and continuing to show up that really felt like the initiation here. Because everything that we're reclaiming about creativity and our own creativity and how we move with that to actually make impact, to actually create new paradigm projects and programs and relationships, how we move with that, is really, really key for what's coming next. If you want to entertain that we're coming to the end of the Kali Yuga, whatever we claimed in this cycle, however we were strengthened as a leader, and most importantly, a leader of ourselves, is going to be brought into this massive, massive rebirth in the next cycle, which is Venus and the sun meeting in the sign of Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, that initiating fire. So we're going from fire to fire. And my theory is that Venus is the golden key to the age of Aquarius. Because if we don't bring in the principles of care and connection and empathy and kindness while holding a vision, so it doesn't mean that we become pushovers, it doesn't mean that we allow for harmful behavior, it doesn't mean that we don't have boundaries. That leadership is keeping the mission, keeping the goal at center, so that we grow as we rise to that. We grow as people as we rise to that. If we don't bring those principles in, well, then we're going to fall short in creating the culture that we really want. And we might fall for the fake version of the age of Aquarius that is not about connection, that is really bringing everything into the digital and trying to do that in a way that just seems so compelling that we fall for it instead of standing for the organic, standing for the real, standing for the authentic, and saying, no, thanks. We don't want to live in a 15-minute city. We want to actually grow our own food and create networks of people across the world that are connecting their projects and really solving the problems of the world that we've lived in and have new paradigm ideas. And in all of the research of the highest performing teams, which of course are at places like Google, it's interesting to look at that and see that how are teams high performing? They feel safe. They feel emotionally safe. They feel like they can bring all of their ideas. And that actually brings forth their genius. So how do we unlock the genius of the solutions that we need to come up with together? How do we do that as a team in relationship? How do we not only learn how to move with ourselves, but to move together? So Leo is the opposite sign of Aquarius. So we got this beautiful opportunity to find, how do I move with myself? How do I move with my own creative process? What are my blocks? Where are the places where I'm still carrying baggage from my history? And how do I up level so that I can move into my next chapter of my sacred mission? Okay. So that's the scoop on the Venus cycle and the movement. And now I want to do a brief walkthrough and honoring of each of the signs of your Venus. And so with our Venus sign, we're really looking at the human level. We're looking at who we are in both the shadow and the gifts. And it's different than the cycle that we were born into. So this is the first layer. This is the first dimension of what I call the Venus design, is your sign. And in that sign, we get to grapple with the hard parts as well as the gifts and the qualities. But when we develop those gifts and those qualities, it actually puts us more in alignment with ourselves. We have more cohesion. And this is also not looking at the entire chart and what some of the other influences are for your Venus. So it may not exactly land when you read any kind of list of, oh, these are the qualities for this sign. You might go, oh, that doesn't really match for me. And that makes a lot of sense because there's other influences. So really just taking what is yours to take from this and being curious about the rest. But the thing to know is that each of these 12 signs are made up of the 4 elements: water, air, earth, and fire, not in that order, and 3 modes: the mode of initiation or beginning, which is called cardinal; the mode of stabilizing, which is fixed. It's the process that comes to a culmination. It can't go any further. And so it's coming to a completion energy. And then changeable or mutable. And that's where integration happens. And we could say, in a way, that is the heroine's journey as well. There's the birth, there's the completion of whatever was created and bringing it into form, bringing it into the real. And then there's the integration period. And so in that integration period, we're entering into that integration period in this cycle. We're in the reset right now. We can see that those echoes of these same themes really apply to many different aspects of life and nature. In Venus and Aries, we have this beautiful initiating fire. And what I'd like you to do as I go through this is just feel in your body how the energy feels. So if energy is starting in fire, that is the spark. And how does that feel in you? Because we all have all of these energies within us, even if they're not our personal Venus. And so there's a sense of the new, there's a sense of birthing, there's a sense of what's next. And this is the beginning of the heroine's journey. The journey of anything begins with that spark, that new pleasure of discovery, that beginning. And the word that comes here that you might have read in the manual is the fire starter, the one who comes in and is like, okay, let's go. So there's a real leadership here. There's a real pioneering quality here. And there's a directness that's forward, initiating. So big blessings to all of you who are watching or here who have your Venus and Aries. This is a special time for you and a special cycle, because regardless of what your Venus cycle is and your Venus phase is, your Venus, you're in your Venus return right now. When Venus comes back to our Venus in our own chart, then that's called our Venus return. I say that Venus brings a blessing wherever it's moving through our chart if we're available to receive it. So that's the big if we're available to receive it. And that's part of our feminine superpowers, is learning to receive, learning to soften. And no matter where our Venus is, we have this opportunity to get sparked by the Aries energy, even if maybe our Venus is in more of a less bold sign. We get to be inspired by that boldness of Venus and Aries. Oh yeah, I'm gonna take that on. She's like a sister or a friend or something, being like, come on, let's go. Women on a sacred fucking mission. Let's do it. And even if that's not your native place, you're like, yeah, that feels like an invitation that I want to say yes to. That might be extra personal, extra powerful when the Venus in the sky lands with the Venus in our own chart. So always when something's in the same element, it makes a positive aspect called a trine. So it's giving us energy, it's giving us power. If you're a fire Venus, you're definitely going to be feeling it, because we have a lot of this fiery energy, that leadership of the feminine that's being called in all of us, but it may be, more personal for those of you that have that. So thank you, Venus and Aries, for your boldness, for your I am. That's why I played that song. This is like, I'm here. And there's a lack of self-consciousness that can be very positive, because as women, we tend to have our attention sometimes turned so within that we get very, very self-conscious when we express. And so that outward, Venus and Aries, thank you for inspiring us. Venus and Taurus takes that spark, she catches it, and she brings it down, and she stabilizes herself, and she learns how to nourish herself and bring that spark from a possibility into something that is sensual, through nourishing it into something that manifests. So this is the fixed earth and that ability to feel the senses, to embody, and to really be in the realm of touch and to hold in the container of the sensual act. I mean, this is really like the co-regulation of like snuggling with someone or being with someone. You get this beautiful coherence that happens, and everyone can feel better in their system through that kind of connection. Skin to skin connection is so important for us humans. And of course, Venus is one of the rulers of Taurus. So you have a very strong Venus inspiration if you have your Venus in Taurus. And then the next on the journey is this changeable air. So then we're going from the realm of the earthy into the realm of ideas and consideration and curiosity. And ooh, how can my words actually connect and actually have a bit of a impact, in the way that either being witty or expressing desire, expressing possibility through that flirtation. So this is the poet. This is the way that words can be really used to open up possibilities. And there's the pleasure of expressing here. And there's just a love of language and words, and intelligence is very sexy. So blessings to you, Venus in Gemini heroines. And the word that I came up with is like, I consider, considering the possibilities on this journey. Venus in Cancer is our first water sign. And then we're going back into the initiating. So now we're initiating again, but it's water. And so the vulnerability of water to be the first bubbling down the mountain, down the stream on its path that it's leading is both so beautiful, that open-hearted willingness to be the one who cries, to be the one who feels, to be the one who shows what's happening inside. This is the Cancerian superpowers, and that initiating water and remembering, oh, this is a journey that's going to be continuing for a while. And so I need nourishment along the way. But when we think of that water that's moving, it's oftentimes like moving in and then moving out, ebbing and flowing. And so finding that time, when do I need to go in my rest and be unseen? Oh, now it's time to be seen. So this is a lot of the pleasure of caring and the power of nurturing. And this is really mother heart energy. Those who have this Cancer medicine and are inspired by it have this sensitivity and attunement to others and wanting to protect others from care. So I'm going to say I care for the Cancer affirmation, which is a little different than what I said in the guide. And then coming into our fifth sign, this is now we're starting our second round of the elements. So now it's stabilizing fixed fire. And if anyone, if you have any of these Venus signs and you're here and you want to add any keywords or experiences, feel free to put them in the chat if you want to share your own lived wisdom. So in Leo, that stabilizing fire is not just the spark, now it's sustained. It's like the campfire at the center, and everyone's gathering around, and there's this sense of like, yes, we're going on a quest, and I'm gonna share, I'm going to share my art around my process of going on this quest. There's a sense of this shining at center and being willing to be leading and creating. So we're learning the creative process in Leo. And there's a lot about wanting to bring that forth into the world through expression. Oftentimes this is the performer or the artist. And so that Leo energy wants to be seen and be affirmed and have those reflections. And so, yeah, it's I shine. And that energy of Leo is connected to the sun, one of our two players here in our Venus cycle. So there's a warmth here. There's a generosity here in that Leo energy. And then we move into the sixth sign, which is Venus in Virgo. So now we have that changeability happening in Earth. And through that, we have analysis of the details. So if you know Venus in Virgo, and I think there is one in the house, it's the love of refining. Like walking into the room, I've been like, oh, they could just change that and that, and oh, that could totally be better. And so that can be a really positive quality if there's no attachment to things being perfect, but it's this continuous art of perfecting. And Virgos are so good at tending to the details and saying, okay, things might be challenging, but I'm not afraid to do hard things. I'm not afraid to work because I want to be of service. So there's a real devotion here with Venus and Virgo and a real pleasure in serving. And so this wisdom oftentimes is very connected to people, women who have healing abilities and really learn the systems of healing and how healing happens and all the detail in the body and all the detail of the plants in the forest, and really apply those in a very detailed way. So blessings on you, Venus in Virgos. I refine is the key word here. And then we come to the seventh sign. For the first time in this journey, we're meeting other. We're meeting ourselves through the mirror of Libra, through understanding how others see us. And so in Libra, we encounter the sacred other as a teacher. And this always brings us more perspective. And we know that from a dear friend, from a lover, from a partner. They tell us things about ourselves that we often, maybe we know them, but we don't always have them front of mind, or we get to learn and grow from those reflections. And so this is the second sign that Venus is the ruler of. And there's a power here of balancing. I'm balancing myself, I'm balancing other. And the pleasure comes in harmonizing. So we must have ourselves first. We must be able to hold ourselves first to be able to then attune to another and integrate what we need with what they're needing to have that harmony. So most of the core issue of why we're not making more progress on this planet to create solutions and to create the world that we want is that a lot of times we do not know how to work together. Even if we share a lot of values together, you see these groups, you go, oh, surely we all share this value. We're here for the same project. And then the lack of harmony, the disharmony, the inability to move through conflict in a way that brings more cohesion really, really sabotages a lot of potentially beautiful, beautiful projects. I'm going to just see. Okay, got someone off mute again. There we go. Okay. So Libra oftentimes is finding that balance. And of course, she represents the scales. And that way that, when we look at the Lady Justice, she has on her blindfold. She's not looking, she's feeling into it. She's feeling into what is the truth, what is the justice. And so that's an important aspect. And her affirmation is, I relate. Then we do the deep dive into the stable water. So when any of the fixed or stabilizing signs, you're getting to the most potency of that element. So fixed water, this is the energy of deepening through the intimacy that happens when we're sharing more depths in our partnership. So this is where we go from dating to, actually having sex or getting married and sharing resources, or we go from being friends to becoming business partners. There's some kind of shared energy, co-investment, that this is also the place where we have the most transformation. Scorpio is the sign of transformation. Scorpio correlates with the underworld in this heroine's journey, that stabilizing water that goes to the deep, 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 deep. So really feeling that in your body, like a deep, cold lake. For your own sign, I really encourage you to find, where would I find that in nature? Where would I find that combination? And so it's that going deep that brings an intensity and brings an ability to transmute the hardest feelings through love, through the heart, and to find the power in the shadow places And so her affirmation is I perceive. And then we have Venus in Sagittarius. She's that changeable, mutable fire. She's that integration of the fire element. And that's like going through the longest night with Scorpio, the hardest feeling, the hardest experience, and then coming out to the new day and having that renewal of faith and really finding meaning in whatever happened in those scorpionic depths and having that new vision. So there's an expansion here, the power of honesty, the love of adventure to discover more, to make more meaning. And there's a real freedom love here in expressing love freely. And oftentimes there's quite a humor in Sagittarius because they're looking at the bigger picture. There's a way that some of the most hilarious women I know have Venus in Sagittarius. And the affirmation here is I seek. And then Venus in Capricorn, we're coming into the last, of the rounds here with that initiating earth. This is the way to manifest. So there's all the experience of the journey, and that brings this ability to lead, to be thinking of the future generations, to have that social responsibility, and to have that goal, that sacred mission at center. And this is really the power of influence, and being able to have boundaries is part of that. Being in integrity is part of that. Time in is part of that. Life experience is part of that. And so thank you, to these beautiful Venus and Capricorns. There's a responsibility that is really needed for this time of change in those energies. And her affirmation is I influence. And then we get to the fixed stabilizing air of Aquarius, which very much correlates with this era we're moving into, and Pluto's in Aquarius. And so Venus here is really like been on the journey, come to the culmination of her sacred mission in Capricorn. And now she's like returning to the diverse tribe to share that mission, to start her own movement, to find the collaboration that's going to help her bring that further. So there's a real sense here of networks with heart, with connection, with care, and how to have this innovation that can come through group consciousness, and how can the vision be expanded, and how can we experiment, and how can we be more unconventional in how we do things. So it's like Capricorn's learning the rules, and then Aquarius is how do we break or bend those rules in order to innovate. That's her saying I innovate, and she's the 11th sign. And then the final sign is Venus in Pisces, and we have that mutable or changeable water. And so that integration of the water element, and Venus is considered exalted here. She's considered, this is one of her more positive signs. And so this is really that ability because of the journey. So again, you're looking at this as the journey, the wave, the movement, not just the single, like, okay, I was born with Venus in Pisces. There's this energy of culmination where through this love, through this unconditional love, of understanding suffering, because there's a sensitivity with water always. There's the feeling level with water. And so there's this understanding of the suffering that really helps her to let go of more of her maybe agenda or more of those conditioned places, and to surrender to something larger, to surrender to faith, to surrender to the source energy, the creator energy, the God energy. People have different ways of thinking of that, but to really be in service to something that is beyond herself or deeper than herself. This is the soul's mission here. And that comes through this incredible ability to empathize and have compassion for the suffering of this world. And so there's a lot of healing energy here. There's a lot of intuition here. And her saying is, I dream. So she's the dreamer. And so when we connect back into Venus in Pisces, we're going to have another opportunity as Venus goes retrograde to go into that dreaming space and then to come back out with the new spark. So I'm going to give you some dates here. And then we're going to do a little bit of a writing exercise to celebrate what you've accomplished in this time. So the dates I want to bring to your attention is that this Venus cycle that we're in now, that went from August 13th to 2023, save that date, reflect on that date, all the way to March 22nd, 2025, it ripples back to the prior Venus in Leo cycle, because these cycles repeat every 8 years. And so you can do some reflection on what was moving through your life, what were the themes, August 15th, 2015 to March 25th, 2017. And that was the last Leo cycle. And so that's going to land in your chart in the same place that this cycle is landing, not the same degrees exactly, but the same place. It's going to light up the same spot in your chart. And the chart is broken into 12 areas. So there's the 12 signs, which are the different expressions of our human consciousness, from Aries to Pisces. And then there's the 12 houses, from the first house being about self, me, I'm here, I am I'm walking into the room. The rising sign is there. That's very much part of our personality, is that rising sign. But then the 12 houses each contain life experiences. So it's really, really helpful to know and to land that in what house it is. And I will be sending out, well, if you got the guide, you also got that list of the houses and their meaning. So it's really good to contemplate that, because wherever your Venus is in your chart, whatever house, you have an extra ability to connect with your Venus there when you are in the energies of that placement. So, for example, if Venus is in your 6th house of day-to-day details and work and kind of employees and health and all these things, you might find that you have your Venus quality is really lit up around healing, or you tend to really find your people at work, and you tend to create these really positive relationships at work, or you feel that access to your Venus when it's in the 6th house. So part of it is locating through the qualities and being a bit of a detective, like, where does this live in me? There's so many parts of you. And a lot of the time we tend to be operating out of our head, Mercury, or Mars, because we live in a culture that tells us to be, do instead of be. So to be a detective around where do these energies live in me is really helpful. So Venus first went into Aries on February 4th of this month and has been moving through ever since. She will go retrograde tomorrow. I like to see if I can feel into it. Not that there's any pressure to do that, but it can be, interesting to notice. And so that is happening at 4:36 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow on March 1st. And so you can feel into that and see. And then she is going to meet the sun on March 22nd. So everything between now and March 22nd, starting tomorrow. So today is the day of celebration, of really claiming your wins, and just really filling up with this energy of the peak, of this sense of almost like there's nothing to do. I mean, we're going to claim wins, but almost like this beingness, this shining at the brightest sense. And then tomorrow there'll be more of a reflective energy and an invitation and a pull to that, to look back. And so I encourage you to continue to do this victory journal for the entire time between now and March 22nd. And again, if you're in the Facebook group, I'll be sharing some encouragement around that. So everything between now and March 22nd is about the Venus and Leo cycle. Is that clear? So we haven't started a new cycle yet. So Venus and Aries at the end of the Leo cycle is very different than Venus and Aries at the beginning of the Venus in Aries cycle, which is what's going to happen March 22nd. We'll be in a new cycle. That's the first zodiac I am. So after March 22nd, that retrograde energy, because she's going to be retrograde for 43 days. So half of it's in the last of this cycle, and then half of it's in the next cycle. There's a sense of wrapping up this claiming of our creative power, and in even this history that's happened when we've been open-hearted and we've gotten hurt, and the way that we've shut down either creatively or shut down our hearts. Like all of that's the reflection time of how have I grown and where am I now? And how is that informing my leadership going forward? And then that new cycle is going to be about really starting something new. That first retrograde time, the 20, whatever days, 21 days, is more like an orientation. So I call this the reset time between one cycle and the next. So I find that that's more of an orienting and receiving this new Aries energy, this brand new energy after Venus meets the sun. So definitely on March 22nd, I encourage you to set aside schedule, set aside your time, and really go be with nature in some way as Venus meets the sun. That is happening on March 22nd at 6:07 p.m. And it is said, I haven't gone too much of a dive into this, but it is said in this particular Venus and Aries cycle, there's going to be no invisibility. She's going to move from evening star and then the next day be morning star, which is very unusual. Usually there's at least a few days to 8 days of can't see her because she's too close to the sun. So that also shows us there's something different and something special about this cycle. Pay attention, to the astronomy here. There's a whole process for going out and being with her, doing ceremony around this, but really it just comes down to being with yourself, giving yourself the time, the space, the container to access your deep heart and to receive your own guidance and to just receive what's coming in without having to put anything on it. It's a deep, deep receiving time. And then she's going to go back into Pisces on March 27th. So she's going to move over that world point, going backward again. And then she'll go direct on April 13th, still in Pisces. And then she'll move back again, April 30th, and she'll go back into Aries. And then it's full on, baby. So if you're doing, launches, new projects, after April 30th, it's going to be a high level of activation of the new, of the forward motion, of the bright, of the being seen, just kind of knowing that. And because it's a 19-month cycle, obviously that's not going to be the only time in the 19 months that you're going to be putting yourself out there, but it's an extremely beautiful opportunity to put yourself out there and to launch and to seed whatever's new. And a lot of that might come from your reflections that you do in this time. So that retrograde time is a really good time to be looking at your content, refining your messaging, receiving reflections about your services, receiving testimonials. That beautiful 40 days is a great time in your business to be just collecting more information and how can I be of greater service. One of my favorite books, A Woman's Guide to Power, Unbound. And this is Kasia Urbaniak. Yes. Even though she's in retrograde tomorrow, you're still in celebration of Leo cycle. Absolutely. Yeah. So I would take this victory log, and I'm going to be doing that every day between now and March 22nd as part of the reflection, because when we're thinking about what our wins are and we're free writing that, that's going to automatically give us those markers of what happened. And of course, we're going to also notice the mistakes and the things that didn't go well. So yes. I would be in celebration of yourself and in reflection of yourself in the Leo cycle through the whole half of the retrograde until March 22nd. And so in this victory log, it's super, super simple. It's about celebrating yourself. And you may also find that you're moved to in this period to also appreciate other women in your life and to notice their qualities and to share, to express what you appreciate about them. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do this. And it's just taking a space in your journal and saying, I celebrate. And you're going to write out what you're celebrating. And you're going to keep going until the page is full.
Make peace with all the women you once were. Lay flowers at their feet. Offer them incense and honey and forgiveness. Honor them Give them your silence. Listen. Bless them and let them be. For they are the bones of the temple you sit in now. For they are the rivers of wisdom leading you toward the sea. I have been 1,000 different women.
I will answer this one question and I'll tell you a bit more about some spots that I have to work with me. So, this whole cycle that we're in right now, and if you signed up for the Venus guide, you got a map for the Venus and Leo cycle, and it has all the dates and it has all the movements. It has all the Venus portals. Those are power dates. So for this next cycle for Venus and Aries, I haven't released the map yet, but I encourage you to get it, stay on the list, get the map. And even if you don't know what those dates mean, or you don't know the astrology, to say, oh, this is an important moment to touch in with my feminine nature, to be in nature, to be tending to my process of inner transformation. And so this whole cycle since last August 2023, not last August, the August before, has been a Leo themed cycle. That was the book, inviting us into this journey to strengthen our hearts, to heal, to claim our creative power, to include our inner child in our lives and our creative expression. And that's coming to a close. First, we're going to have a retrograde to wrap up, to review that. Starting tomorrow, we're viewing the Leo cycle. And then on March 22nd, Venus and the sun are coming together again, closest to the earth. And they are meeting in the sign of Aries. And in that sign of Aries, we start a new cycle, and that's going to be Aries themed. And I'm not going to talk too much about that here because we're not there yet, so stay tuned. Come in the Facebook group if you want to be in this reset period together and be having some encouragement of that reflection process, that victory log. And there's a very special essence that's a Venus cycle essence that I'm going to share the link and encourage you. I'm going to be dosing on that every day during the retrograde cycle. I just ordered mine. And I'm going to be reflecting and doing that journaling. So the potency of this isn't going to come again for another 19 months. And for this specific place in your chart, for another 8 years. So whatever you claim, whatever you receive, whatever you're really able to connect with is really important for your creative power for the coming 8 years. So not to say that to be in any kind of pressure. It's not like you're going to miss something, because in that movement, it comes again. So let me just show you this graphic, which I didn't include in my slides, but this might help those of you that are like new to the cycle, new to the movement. You can see here is when the cycle began, August 13th. And then she's been around this whole journey going into the underworld. Well, first morning star, and then going into the underworld, and then evening star. We're here. Dun, 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 dun. Tomorrow is the last visible, what I call the new Venus portal. It's going to be in the sign of Aries. In the west, the moon and Venus are going to meet, giving us this invitation to claim our story as a heroine. So I'll include all these graphics in the replay as well. If you are interested in working with me more deeply, I'm opening up sacred mission activation. And although this process works for any woman at any age, I'm giving first dibs, we could say, to my one-on-one work to women of midlife, particularly age 47 to 58, because you have a very special role to play in this new cycle. You are a cohort that has an incredibly powerful marker in the sign of Aries, which is called Chiron. And I'm not going to go too much into that, but it's basically like you're the new elders on the block. Your lived wisdom is fresh, and it's really important right now. Your sacred mission, your gifts, your visibility are really important right now. And because of that Chiron, there's a way that wounding around identity and wounding around visibility and wounding around being bold and being the leader, you've been on a journey with that for the past 6 years or so, because Chiron in the sky has been in Aries, activating this point in your chart. And so whatever you've claimed from that, whatever you've grown from that is so potent. And so this isn't about excluding other women at all. This is about really shining the light on those of you that have this particular medicine for this time and giving you some real support in bringing forth, one, deepening into who you are as a heroine. Who do you need to become to be the woman who's going to fulfill your sacred mission, and to give you this immersive experience. The way I design this is 2-3 hour experiences with time to integrate in between. So the first day is really that knowing yourself through going through all the markers in the Venus design. You don't have to know any astrology for this. because I'm going to decode it for you. And then having that week in between to integrate that powerful but easy assignments and to stay connected on Telegram so you can be sharing, so you can be asking questions. And then our second session, we go into the planning with the astrology for prosperity, strategic for you, what you're wanting to bring forth in your vision, and to really understand the optimum timing for you. If you're called to this, you can definitely dive into the website, learn more, and book that, or just email me, connect@venuswisdom.com, so you can explore that. And if you know any other women who you think would really benefit from that, who are in that bracket, please let them know of this opportunity, this boost in your leadership that can happen, this clarity on the sacred mission that can happen when we spend this time together and really focus on you and what you're creating and how to help you to create that. It's a great dose of Venus wisdom and working with me in a very individual way. That's not just about information, but it's also about creating some beautiful, potent ways that you can make sure that you keep tuning in to the cycle and your own feminine nature, and you're deepening into your leadership. I'm really excited about this, and to do it in the new cycle is going to be great for those that want to plan with the Venus cycle and be in this movement of moving with oneself and understanding better how to move with others within our own family, within our own company, to create that prosperity so that we can be of better service in these wild and beautiful times. So that is that. It's been an absolute pleasure to be with you and to share this time. Thanks so much for being here and participating and being present. Has just really touched my heart to be here. And I'm going to take one last sip of our charged water. Say cheers to you. Thank you for all the ways you've claimed yourself and come into your wholeness. And I hope you really can feel that in your body, the victory of being alive as a woman at this time who has a big, deep, burning vision and is ready to bring that to the next level. So cheers, cheers. And last but not least, we'll blow out our spark until we meet again. All right. Take good care. Bye-bye.